We're rolling. Greetings again. This is going to be, I'm going to start talking about my grandparents. So, the first set of grandparents are the Frenette grandparents. And of course, I called them Pippi and Mimi. So, this is uh, Louie and Bernadette Frenette. So, Louie and Bernadette Frenette. They would have been born in the 1800s for sure. They lived on Hall Avenue, which is very close to my other grandparents, which were on Hall Avenue. Now, these two grandparents, I don't remember a lot of it myself, but I've certainly heard the stories come down from my parents. And I guess Louis was quite a guy. So we'll talk about Louis a little bit. Bernadette was a very religious woman, very Catholic, and she prayed a lot on her knees with the rosary, and uh, I think she went to mass almost every morning. They had 7 children. Maybe I could tell you the list of the kids. So I'm not sure about the oldest, the youngest. These are all my aunts and uncles, of course. It was Gaston, Marcel, Armin, of course, and Nikki, Midge, Veronica, and Estelle. Some of the girls' names I think are nicknames, and I don't know what their long name is. So those are the 7 kids. And my dad always used to say when he was growing up, the first one up in the morning was the best dressed, and because there was 3 boys. So maybe my 3 boys felt the same way about getting dressed in the morning. I don't know. So anyhow, Louis was quite a guy. He was a guide for the surveyors who surveyed the government surveyors who surveyed upper upper Canada, upper Ontario would have been the only one. So they would get themselves up there. I would think this might be in the very late 1800s, very early 1900s. So he would go in there and he would grow a ginormous beard. And every once in a while, one of the stories is that he was a crack shot. I used to have his odd 30-30 rifle. It was a lever action rifle, and there was a saddle ring on the rifle, and there's a wooden stock, of course. That sat in, I saw it, of course, that sat in my mom and dad's house on uh, uh, Virginia Park in South Windsor for a very long time, sitting in the closet. And I don't know what happened to it after that. So I would love to have that thing. But anyhow, that was his rifle. And he was a guide. So he'd get these guys where they wanted to go. And then all day long, they would go out and they would survey the land, recording the land and mapping it. And he would have nothing. Well, he became the cook for everyone, and they didn't want to carry a lot of things. I'm not quite sure how they got in and out of the bush. I think there's a lot of walking involved. I don't think they had, overland vehicles or anything like that. It was pretty early, so they did a lot of walking. They didn't want to carry a lot of stuff. So the meat supply, he hunted for the meat supply. And as the story goes, uh, he would be sitting in camp, he would cut a path, a line of sight through the bush, and he knew where the deer trails were. So he would always camp close to a deer trail. And there was quite a few surveyors, so he was able to utilize an entire deer in just a couple of days. It was cold, of course, the deer would keep, but he didn't want to have to carry a lot of stuff, so they would eat it pretty quickly. And the idea is there was other guys with him, and they would sit in camp with their rifles in their laps. They would hear the deer come, and there was a very narrow line of sight, and they had fell a tree right in the line of sight, so the deer had to jump. So this is the kind of shot these guys were. They would take their rifle, they would hear the deer coming, they'd pose the rifle, and they had like a millisecond where this deer would jump, and they had to shoot the deer right in the middle. And they always shot for the head, because if you shoot any other place, if they hit them, then they have to go chase them through the bush. So they go for a headshot. And I guess my grandfather Louie was the best shot. He hit him in the head very, very often. So that would down the beer. They would drag him in a very short distance, and then they were able to butcher him and cook him up. So that's the story about him. There's another story about him. I guess they lived in Sudbury for my dad's younger years. They moved to Hall Avenue much later. But they lived in Sudbury. Bernadette used to visit him. He would come out of the bush 2 times a year, and they would be courting. And so finally, he married later in life, much later in life for those times. Those times they used to marry early. I think they were late 20s by the time they got married and had 7 kids. They could have been in their low 40s by, high 30s by the time they're having all the kids. That's probably why they were older. So I think they died when I was quite young, but I do remember them. I remember seeing them. I can certainly pick them out in the picture. But again, these stories come down probably from my dad. The other story is that he would be a separatiste today. He was strong French Canadian, and he had a thick Quebec style accent. And he was in a barbershop in Sudbury where there isn't that many French people. He was in a barbershop. He was lathered up to get a shave. And they were married at this time. I think my dad was sitting there. He was a little guy who was sitting in the barbershop. And some big old guy came in and he saw Louie sitting in the chair. And he goes, "How you doing, Frenchie?" And my grandfather, he didn't like being called that. He thought that was a derogatory term. So he got up, as the story goes. He got up with a face full of lather. He got up, took it off like really slowly, went over to this guy, and I guess he reached back and he started very low, and he came forward and he hit this guy on the jaw so hard he knocked him back all the way straight through a plate glass window. And that was the end of that story. And what else we got with this guy? Excuse me. That's a story for him. And those other stories. Oh, he built a grotto to the Virgin Mary. If you don't know what a grotto is, it's you see the Virgin Mary, and you've seen the ones with a bathtub around them. So he built a stone grotto around there. Anything else can we say about them? My mom and dad used to court between the two houses, and down Wyandotte Street there was the arcade theater and things like that, and that's how they used to court. So not a lot to say about those grandparents. Those are the stories that I have. Bernadette, she was always in the background. I never really did that. Oh, I know. I took a trip to Sudbury with them. We saw an old lady. I remember over the radio at that time, the radio was saying, I think Alan Shepard went into space for the first time. It was a up and down thing. And then it might have been Glenn, somebody orbited the Earth 3 times for the first time. And that came over the radio. And he just wagged his head, and he couldn't believe he came from, living in the bush, came out to say he didn't actually believe that somebody orbited the Earth. So that was quite a big deal for him. What was the other thing? Gosh, there was something else. I guess that's the story for them. One other thing. No, that's all I got for that. So that's the story of Bernadette and Louie Frenette. They loved each other dearly. Louie used to stand on his front porch when he was retired. He was quite old, and he had a squirrel trained. The squirrel would run up one sleeve, across his chest, down another sleeve, to get a peanut. So he put his hand out, and then there'd be a peanut in this hand. He stretched them out, and the squirrel would run over there. I think I remember seeing that myself. So that's all we got for those guys. Okay? God bless you all, guys.